Hello, this is Niko at Charlie's Foreign Car, and today we are doing the Porsche 996 IMS bearing. Here's the IMS hole right here. We're removing the standard roller bearing and we are going to install the plain bearing in its place. Come on over here and I'll show you. We are going to remove this seal and see if there's any oil that has leached in to this bearing. And to remove it, we're just going to pop it off. We don't have to be too careful because we're not going to reuse this bearing. And this one, so if we tip it upside down, this one does not have any oil running out of it. But you can see it is washed out. It does not have a bunch of fresh oil or fresh grease in there. It's in need of more oil. That's why what a lot of people do is they just take this seal that's in here and they just remove it and they throw this seal away. They do not reinstall it. That way the engine oil bath can splash in and always lubricate this bearing. You want a lot more oil than what's in there to be oiling this bearing. A new bearing is going to have full oil pressure all the time. The roller bearing, they probably packed this with grease originally. It worked for a while. The oil penetrates through the seal, washes the grease out, and then you have just a dry old bearing. So this bearing's not bad. We could cut it apart just to see how the races are and everything. Let's cut this thing open. So obviously there's going to be some very fresh tool marks that we might see somewhere, but what we're really looking for is a failing race. And you can see how the inside of that guy is nice and polished. We're going to spin it all the way around. A little bit of something built up there. It almost looks like there's a shadowing effect of like the actual ball, the roller bearing is like a bearing mark, like it sat for a really long time. But we do not have any failed inner race. It feels nice and smooth right there. We take this side of the bearing, wipe that clean out. I just cut that in half, right? And we're just gonna look right inside there all the way around. That looks real nice. And then how about this one? Do the same thing all the way around. Clean that guy out. Get that nice and clean. All the way around. And that also looks real nice. Some minor little scuff marks here and there, but they're so I can't even feel them. This IMS bearing was a good bearing, and we just proved it. We just cut it apart and pulled the races out. We could still remove the actual ball bearings from each one here. I may have to cut those guys out, but if the balls are bad, then the race also fails. So that is the string of bearings right there. It's kind of like some automotive jewelry almost. It can almost be a bracelet. But yeah, and those all look really nice. They don't spin nice and free anymore because I've damaged and twisted this thing all up and put a grinder to it and everything else. But I could safely say now, after cutting this bearing apart, inspecting the races, and looking at all these race balls and everything, this bearing was just fine. That you want to make sure that if you do have any bad races in here, you have to start checking a lot of stuff. Some say that the engine is bad. It depends on how bad the races actually get. So now we're going to unbox this IMS solution bearing. The plain bearing is what we have here. So we are going to install these two pieces. These two pieces, this is now going to be an oil-fed plain bearing. This is going to be installed back inside, and it's just going to ride on a plain standard oil-fed bearing. We're going to install this oil filter assembly. Then we're going to feed oil into the bottom. This is what you have to modify the engine crankcase for, just this little section right here, because there's no, right now the stock Porsche case does not have an oil-fed IMS bearing. So we are going to oil feed a plain bearing. You can see the oil is going to go into here, route into this hole. It's then going to line up right with that oil land right in the middle, and it's just going to feed oil in there like crazy. You can see there's a drain on this side. That's what we need the cap for. So the cap is going to capture all that oil, not allow it to fill the IMS. So the stock unit on the left, this would be showing the outside of the engine case. Here's our bearing. This is how everything sits. The stock unit is not oil fed. The LN engineering unit in my right hand, that is oil fed. You can see the oil filter over here, and that is now an oil fed bearing.